what scared me the most in that moment. I felt unsafe with my own body, that I thought lost the ability to sleep or something was wrong with my brain. And then the fear, nobody understands me, because if I go talk to my doctor, it feels like nobody can help me. I've been really trying not to take the medication, but I took some like herbal kind of supplements to make sure that I could sleep, all the typical magnesium, meditation, everything I think I put in place to just try to make sure that I could sleep, which obviously afterwards I realized was not helping. The biggest thing was realizing, okay, I have been so tired, or I have not slept at all, and the next day I'm still around and functioning, and or sometimes I still have a good day. And that, I think, was for me the biggest realization, where if I would hit another night like that, I would be like, okay, if I've done this before and I know how to do it again. It may not be very comfortable, but at least I know it's not gonna bring my worst fears or anything that I tend to think about at night. I mean, I'm tired the next day, and I've definitely wanted to avoid feeling like that. But besides that, I actually realized that it doesn't really make a difference sometimes. I've had good days afterwards, I've had good meetings, I've enjoyed myself after a very bad night of sleep, and that very slowly crept in, I guess, my safety center, that if I don't sleep well, then it's another night like that, and then I'll just have to deal with it. And I know how to do it. When we've been talking about accepting a certain situation or sitting with it, it's been more helpful than trying to push their feelings also away with a method. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Eve with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
For those of you who don't know Eve, which is probably the majority of the audience, you are a recent graduate of our sleep certification program. You've had your own journey through insomnia, and tapping was a big part of that journey. And so part of the reason I wanted to have you as a guest was to talk about that, but also learn about your practice that you're starting that involves both tapping and what we teach to help people with insomnia and other struggles as well. Is that a good introduction?
Perfect. It's great. Thank you very much.
Very, very well. Well, with that said, then let's start with your own journey through insomnia, because what you said and what I've actually been interested in hearing more about is how you by yourself discovered a lot of these answers that we teach about, and you kind of discovered your own way out of the struggle. But let's start at the very beginning. How did you start having sleep struggles?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what brought it on, but I had maybe a year before, let's say, my bigger insomnia period. I had like a month where I didn't sleep well, which got me a bit anxious, and then it magically disappeared again. And then a year later, something like that happened again. And I think the fear of that first moment that I had actually made me spiral into insomnia. And that's I think the second time, it could have been, I had 6 weeks before COVID. It could have been that, but it could have been any other thing. I don't really know what it brought on, but definitely the fear of the first moment that I lived a year before was something that brought me into thinking about, oh, not again, what is this? And I definitely went into hyperarousal, monitoring myself, which made, obviously, as we know, everything a little bit worse. Um, I don't think I acutely dealt with it for about 3 to 4 months. And then I had my speed bumps, of course, but often with some more time in between, which gave me a bit of relief. And I actually started working with a sleep coach, not from this sleep school, because I wasn't aware of this one yet at the time. And I think that that obviously helped me a lot mentally, to know that there was somebody by my side. And this is when I started to notice some progress, where of course I hit some speed bumps with every new situation, but I felt more confident in dealing with the nights, knowing that I had some help and it wasn't just me on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, your story is quite familiar, where we have like one episode of not sleeping so well, and it resolves, and then we don't think about it until at some later point. And it's like you said, often it's like, oh no, I don't want that to happen again. That makes us really like
Correct.
protective of our sleep, concerned, and then we have some struggles. And did you also go through what so many of our guests talk about, which is trying like the supplements and sleep hygiene and those type of things?
Everything. I think I've been really trying not to take the medication, but I took some like herbal kind of supplements to make sure that I could sleep. All the typical magnesium, meditation, everything I think I put in place to just try to make sure that I could sleep, which obviously afterwards I realized was not helping. But yeah, I've done it all. Tai Chi. I think it's. I'm not very creative to the list, I think, but there's much to it. Yeah.
I hear. And how about did you try, CBT-I before you came across the sleep coach, or after, or at any time?
Actually, I never did that. I don't know why, but I don't think I actually ever really came across it, or if I did come across it, it didn't sound like something for me. And maybe I was lucky because in my struggle, I remember when I was deep in it, I actually opened up to a colleague of mine saying that, and it's her that referred me to the sleep coach. And maybe actually with that, I early on started working with her, and I think that's what definitely was for me the start of something that became less intense. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what the sleep coach that you worked with, and you can feel free to mention who it is if you want to,
Yeah.
or not. It's up to you completely. But what was their kind of like philosophy, and how do they understand insomnia, and how do they work with you?
Yeah. So her name is Anika Carroll. I loved working with her, and she actually did lots of also physical tests in terms of my health, and then was doing some natural supplements to make sure that we were just supporting my body in the right way, which I think was very helpful because I just felt very supported. I could tell that lots of what she has been saying is quite similar to what you were saying around the sleep medication, that it's not necessarily working. Um, but also no judgment around that. So I remember her saying it, but of course now only I really realize this now. And what was interesting especially was of course I was sitting there being like, I have this problem, there's something wrong with me. And just sitting with her in those calls, she could tell me like, I've helped so many people that have gone through exactly the same thing. And it just made me feel less alone and less of a problem. And I think that was definitely the mental support that I needed in that moment. So yeah, so this is a bit, I think, what helped me a lot. And like I said already, the knowing that there's somebody by your side that is just looking at it, I felt safer. And I think that has been a very big moment. Sometimes even she did this support one-on-one coaching, and I could text her as well. Is when I had a bad night and I could text her, and she didn't necessarily say anything new, but just knowing she was there was sometimes enough for me to get through the day. So that was a big mental support for me.
Yeah, yeah. Knowing you're not alone, that there's somebody by your side, is super helpful. And that's something you mentioned as you were doing your certification training with us, was that often we talked about some concept, and then you're like, yeah, I kind of came to this realization myself. Um, do you remember some of those? Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, so indeed, befriending wakefulness is something that kind of came after a while, when I started to realize, like, well, actually, I can also just enjoy instead of being so scared all the time. Of course, this took a little while. And this also was my sleep coach that was trying to get to turn my mindset a little bit around that the nights are not something to be afraid of. But I think the biggest thing was realizing, okay, I have been so tired, or I have not slept at all, and the next day I'm still around and functioning, and or sometimes I still have a good day. And that, I think, was for me the biggest realization, where if I would hit another night like that, I would be like, okay, I've done it, I've done this before, and I know how to do it again. It may not be very comfortable, but at least I know it's not gonna bring my worst fears or anything that I tend to think about at night. I mean, I'm tired the next day, and I've definitely wanted to avoid feeling like that. But besides that, I actually realized that it doesn't really make a difference sometimes. I've had good days afterwards, I've had good meetings. I've enjoyed myself after a very bad night of sleep, and that very slowly crept in, like in my in I guess my safety center, that yeah, if I don't sleep well, then it's another night like that, and then I'll just have to deal with it, and I know how to do it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a big one. And was working with was it Annika Carroll?
Annika Carroll, yeah.
Yeah, Annika Carroll. Was it after that that things really started getting easier? Because I also know that you and I wanted to talk to you about this too. I know that you used EFT or tapping as well. Was that with her, or did that come later?
So that came actually later. So you're right. I started working with Annika. Things started improving a lot. And I would say that my sleep was much better with here and there some speed bumps or choppy nights where I didn't really know what to do. But generally I was doing quite fine. And I mentioned to her in one of our follow-up calls, like, I'm doing much better, but I feel this anxiety lingering during the day. And it's there even when I'm feeling fine. And that's actually when she recommended trying tapping, because she had an incredible coach herself. And she introduced me to tapping. And I was at that point just really open to try and to see what it could bring me. So I would say I was already much better. I was feeling already much safer. But then there was this anxiety lingering in my body that I then used tapping for, which I thought was incredible after one session, what it could bring. And yeah, that's actually how I started tapping, or how I got introduced into tapping.
Yeah, yeah. So it was by her. You
Yeah.
and then you explored it sort of by yourself or guided with her. You didn't have a separate coach for that.
Yes, it was a separate coach,
It
and it
was.
was more that she said completely free to you. She said, I recommend doing this if you would be open to it, but it was not part of her sleeping coaching
Oh,
program. But she had worked with this coach, and she said that she has used it for other emotional difficulties, and that she said it's a powerful method. So she just said, if you want to try, this is something that I can recommend. And I think she only recommended it when I said that I felt this emotional heaviness still lingering. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure if she would have recommended it. Yeah.
yeah. Completely understand. And um, as we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, we wanted to spend a little time on kind of like expanding on why tapping can be helpful. And I have kind of some ideas about that, but let me ask you first. Why do you think it helped you?
So that first session that I had, I think was the first time when I actually felt safe enough to go have a look at my anxiety that was lingering, or that I could feel was still present. Um, because I'm not 100% sure if I was brave enough to face the anxiety and the signals and all the symptoms that comes with it on my own. And with this practitioner, it got a really creative method into just paying a bit of attention to that anxiety. So we described it with a color where I could feel it physically in my body. And I think with that, I just built a bit of tolerance because I had a coach next to me to look at that anxiety and just hear it a little bit. And obviously now, after having done the certification, I realized that I think it's that maybe that first time where I was listening to my anxiety instead of trying to push it away and not feel it. And yeah, that helped enormously for that anxiety to afterwards go down and not be so present anymore. So I think it's because I listened to it with then a bodily technique, but it could be any technique that just gives you the opportunity to listen or to give a bit of attention to that anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly how I see it too. People often ask me like, "Oh, should I do tapping for my anxiety?" And what I share is always the same, that anything we do to try to push it away is gonna make it stronger, right? Anything we do to with the intent of making ourselves more kind of ready to experience it, feel it, listen is helpful. So for people out there, to make it super clear to everybody in the audience, that if you hear this and you're like, oh, tapping really helped Eve, and you go like, oh, I'm going to tap away my anxiety, that's not going to be helpful. It's rather the opposite. That if we kind of like use tapping as just a way to invite ourselves to be like, it's okay to feel anxiety, it's
Yeah,
okay to be here and acknowledge it, that can be really helpful, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's sitting in, or being okay with sitting in that uncomfortable moment, and it's one way to allow it to be there and giving you another way of dealing and processing that. So I think that's what for me made it a success in that way. Yeah, absolutely. But I definitely felt already safer, and mentally I was already in a much better place. If it might have been introduced earlier, I probably would have used it to really try to get to sleep, which is obviously something we know is not necessarily helpful.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And um, and what happens next here? Did you pretty soon after this say to yourself, "I think I want to help other people with this methodology and start your tapping practice," or what happened? What happened there?
Yeah, exactly. So I did obviously afterwards because I got introduced into EFT, much other work with EFT, which I was always stunned by what kind of result it brought or what kind of insights that it gave to me. So indeed, I started doing my certification to be an EFT coach as well. And that took around a year, and I had my first son as well. But now, since 6 months, I'm actually indeed helping people with that. It was for a while a little bit unclear, and I think for I needed a bit more extra time to maybe process my own experience before I felt safe enough to help other people. But actually, this certification has helped me a lot with that as well because it's been quite of a healing experience, even though I was already recovered, because it just helped me understand a lot more concepts even
Yeah.
now. And then I realized, oh, I was textbook example of what insomnia is. Um, so yeah, so with that, actually, I slowly and slowly started to feel more ready to help other people, and that's what I'm currently doing since half a year, more or less.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And I think if I remember correctly from the time where you applied to the certification program, you said something along the fact that you'd started with the tapping practice, but then I think people knew that you had struggled with insomnia, so
Yeah.
they asked you about it. And is that how you thought about, like, oh, I should kind of maybe specialize or add expertise in sleep?
Yeah, exactly. So indeed, because my story was I got introduced with the FT because I used to have insomnia. I have the impression that that's the people that I attract right now. And so I started having a couple of clients asking for help with sleep. And I've helped them on a couple of topics around sleep. Because there's a couple of things that we would go look at. And I still felt like I'm missing a bigger picture or more something in my backpack as a toolkit that is not just EFT. And that's actually when I decided if I really want to work with sleep, I feel like I need to have more expertise on the topic itself and not just having lived through it and having a method available. And having gone through the certification, it's very interesting how I've changed my approach right now because the sleep coaching is the bigger context where I would use EFT in specific moments, but I use EFT for sleep now very differently than what I did before, which is really interesting and I think is obviously more helpful. And I think I've said it with you as well in one of our one-on-one coaching um, that the biggest shifts that I see with my clients were always on more on accepting the situation, building tolerance for the situation that they're in rather than I wish I could sleep tonight. I wish I could get rid of this uncomfortable feeling. So it's also just been an experience and a trial and error for me to see what works best. And you can see immediately on people's faces where you hit more a nerve, or when you can see an actual shift. And I think it's when we've been talking about accepting a certain situation or sitting with it, it's been more helpful than trying to push their feelings also away with a method. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Yeah. And you are, if I remember correctly, you're based in Switzerland, and are you mainly working with clients like in in Dutch or any other language you may speak, or is it English or both, or
Yeah. So I'm indeed Belgian, but I live in Switzerland, and currently my business is all online because I offer it in English and in Dutch indeed for the moment. So I've actually quite some clients in Belgium that I just take on remotely, but also English here and there. But currently it's all online, so that's what I'm currently offering in those two languages. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we'll link, of course, to your website in the description here. Now, going back to your own story, as you probably know, I like to ask everybody if they could, you know, travel back in time to when you were struggling with insomnia. What would you tell yourself?
Yeah. What would I tell myself? I think if I could be physically there with myself, I would first want to give her a hug because it has been definitely the most tricky period that I feel that I have gone through. Um, because I never knew what it was to mentally struggle until I hit insomnia. And I think what I just would love to tell myself is that there is nothing wrong with you and your system is just working really well. Because I think that is what scared me the most in that moment. I felt unsafe with my own body, that I thought lost the ability to sleep or something was wrong with my brain. And then the fear nobody understands me because if I go talk to my doctor, it feels like nobody can help me. So definitely that would be something where I would reassure myself that there is nothing wrong with you and your system is actually just in overdrive and that's all it is. It's obviously a lot more difficult than just saying there's nothing wrong with you, but maybe I would have not been so scared if that would have not been in the back of my head all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have helped a ton. And finally, did you learn things going through that insomnia journey that has helped in other aspects of life?
Yes, definitely. It is I've gotten to know myself on a very deep level, which obviously there's moments where I would never want to experience that again. On the other hand, I'm really grateful because I've learned so much about where my limits are, where I know I can actually work with myself rather than fight myself, because I guess that's where long of the struggle was. And well, it has also led me to change complete career. So I'm also quite grateful for the fact that it has taught me much more sympathy and empathy for other people going through the same thing, and is giving me more purpose on trying to help people that are suffering as well. So definitely those are a couple of things. But I'm also quite grateful that I've gone through it, even though in the moment that you probably wouldn't have heard me saying that. But afterwards, yes, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And we will conclude here, Eve. But it was super nice getting to talk to you in this context, and be in touch, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope that you found a ton of value in the video that you just saw. Now, if somebody would ask me, hey, Daniel, what do you think would really help somebody who has tuned in to a lot of the videos, who understands a lot, but who's just not seeing things change for them? I would say contextualization, discourse, to talk to somebody who understands what you've been going through, that you can ask questions to, get a reply, ask a follow-up question, get another reply, etc. That conversation so often starts to clarify things and really kickstarts your journey towards peaceful sleep. And one way you can have such a conversation is by booking a call with one of our coaches. In fact, you can head over to our website, thesleepcourseschool.com, and you can see which coaches offer calls and check out their individual success story to see if their story relates with you, and you find that connection that leads you to see that this is a person that I could work with, this is a person I would talk to, and then you can book a call, and that could be what really kickstarts your journey to where you want to be.